The sound of a child's laughter echoed faintly through the backyard, muffled by the heavy glass doors that led out from the kitchen. Vivian Blake stood by the sink, sleeves rolled up to her elbows, hands dripping with soap suds as she watched her 6-year-old daughter, Lila, spin barefoot in the grass under the morning sun. There was a time, not long ago, when Vivian had 6 assistants and 2 housekeepers to keep her life running with mechanical precision. Now, the mansion was stripped of all but one employee. One girl. And she was late. Again. Of course, Vivian muttered under her breath. Rinsing a plate, she had no intention of eating off again. This wasn't how she was used to living. Not for a woman who had built an empire from the ground up, who could buy a new car on impulse without checking her account. But that life was behind her now. Or at least that's what she was letting people believe. The truth was, Vivian hadn't lost her company or her money. She had simply stopped trusting the world around her. After her husband died, and after 3 separate women tried to attach themselves to her under the guise of helping raise Lila, Vivian made a choice. She pulled away, sold the cars, let the staff go, moved into one of her quieter homes in a gated neighborhood no one asked questions about. She wanted to see who would come into their lives without the scent of wealth in the air. Someone who would love her daughter not because she was the heiress of a fortune, but because she was Lila. And then came the ad. Live-in nanny. Cooking, cleaning, childcare. Discreet employer. Private residence. No mention of money. No names. Just the basics. And one girl replied. Riley Torres. Vivian remembered the first time she saw her. Big brown eyes, a too-thin frame, and a quiet voice that didn't try to sell itself. She'd looked uncomfortable in the entryway, clutching a folder full of mismatched resumes. But the moment Lila peeked out from behind the stairs, Riley had smiled.
Soft. Pure.
And Lila had smiled back. Hey, if you're enjoying this story, go ahead and drop a like to help us grow even more. And let me know in the comments, on a scale from 0 to 10, what score would you give this story so far? Your feedback makes all the difference. That had been 3 weeks ago. Vivian didn't know why she'd hired her. Riley was underqualified, clearly not trained professionally, and had never worked for a family before. But Vivian had watched her sit on the kitchen floor and braid Lila's hair with quiet focus, and that had been it. The job was hers. Now, Vivian scrubbed the pan harder, sighing, her patience wearing thin as she glanced at the clock again. 8:42 a.m. Riley was supposed to be there at 8 o'clock. The sound of the front door opening startled her. She turned just as Riley came rushing in, hair in a messy bun, raincoat wet from the sudden morning shower, cheeks flushed. I'm so sorry, she breathed, setting down her bag. The bus broke down and, you have a phone, Vivian said coldly. Use it next time. Riley's eyes dropped. Yes, ma'am. Don't ma'am me, Vivian muttered. Just be on time. Riley nodded, moving quickly past her to hang up her coat, and then out the back door toward Lila. Vivian didn't follow. She didn't want to see the moment Lila's face lit up at the sight of her. She didn't want to see that Riley always crouched to Lila's level and said her name like it was something sacred. She didn't want to admit how, when Riley smiled, the corners of her mouth curved like they were made for gentleness. She certainly didn't want to think about the way Riley smelled like rain and sugar when she passed too close. But later, when the house was quiet and Lila napped in her room, Vivian found herself leaning against the doorframe to the laundry room, watching Riley fold tiny t-shirts and humming under her breath. You don't have to sing, Vivian said. Riley jumped, startled. Sorry, old habit. Helps me focus. Vivian stared at her for a beat longer than necessary. You like kids? Yes, Riley said quickly. I mean, not just your daughter. I've always loved kids. I helped raise my siblings growing up. Big family?
Loud.
Messy.
Poor.
Vivian's eyes narrowed. And yet you chose this kind of job. Because it's honest, Riley said, standing a little straighter. Because it lets me do something that matters, even if no one sees it. That answer shouldn't have meant anything, but it did. It echoed somewhere in Vivian's chest she'd been ignoring for years. You're not like the others, Vivian said quietly. Others? The ones who came before. The ones who smiled too fast and looked past Lila to see the furniture. Riley shook her head. I didn't even notice the furniture. I know, Vivian said, and turned to leave, her voice softer now. That's why you're still here. That night, after Lila was asleep and the house was still, Vivian poured herself a glass of wine and sat in the dark kitchen, the hum of the refrigerator the only sound in the room. She thought about Riley's laugh, the way Lila clung to her shirt when she said goodbye, the way Vivian's pulse had stuttered when Riley brushed against her arm while reaching for a plate. She wasn't supposed to feel this. Not for an employee. Not for someone 10 years younger and with hands rough from scrubbing floors instead of signing deals. But when she closed her eyes, it wasn't the wine that warmed her. It was the thought of Riley whispering stories to Lila, barefoot in the hallway, bathed in moonlight. It was the thought that maybe, for the first time in years, something real had walked into her life without asking for anything but a place to belong. The next morning, Riley arrived 5 minutes early. Vivian noticed, even if she didn't comment. She heard the front door open gently at 7:55 a.m. and resisted the urge to turn around. From her spot at the kitchen counter, stirring her coffee, she listened instead. The soft thud of Riley's worn sneakers on the tile. The low murmur of her greeting Lila upstairs. The gentle rustling of bags being set down, and then the unmistakable hum of Riley's voice, singing something barely above a whisper. Vivian hated how easily that sound settled into her chest. She told herself it was because the house had been too quiet for too long. That it was simply nice, having noise that wasn't made of spreadsheets and stock alerts. But when Riley entered the kitchen a moment later, cheeks still pink from the walk, smile hesitant as she reached for a rag to wipe down the table, Vivian couldn't deny it anymore. She liked Riley being here. More than she should. Coffee? Vivian asked, startling herself. Riley blinked. What? I said, do you want some? Oh, no, thank you. I mean, yes. I'd love some. If that's okay. Vivian poured a second mug and handed it over without looking at her. Cream's in the fridge. Black's fine. Vivian nodded. They drank in silence for a moment, the early light slanting through the kitchen window, casting long shadows across the counter. Then Riley said softly, Lila asked me if I was going to stay forever. Vivian's grip on her mug tightened. What did you tell her? That I'd stay as long as I was wanted. Smart answer. Riley tilted her head. She's lonely. She's a child. So are most of the people I've met. Lila just happens to be honest about it. Vivian looked at her sharply, unsure whether to be offended or impressed. And me? Am I one of those people you've met? Riley's eyes didn't flinch. You don't let anyone close enough to tell. Vivian stared for a moment too long. Then she turned away. Don't overstep, Riley. I wasn't trying to. Good. Because this isn't that kind of job. What kind is it? One where we keep things professional. Understood. But the tension lingered like heat. And later that day, as Vivian worked in the office she'd converted from the formal dining room, she found herself distracted by the sound of laughter drifting from upstairs. Lila's. Then Riley's. Followed by the rhythmic thump of footsteps running down the hallway. Vivian stood, walked quietly to the foot of the stairs, and looked up just as Riley came sliding around the corner with Lila in her arms, both of them breathless and grinning. They stopped when they saw her. Sorry, Riley said, still smiling. We were playing Castle Monster. I lost. I won. Lila shouted proudly, twisting in Riley's arms. Vivian's heart clenched. Riley set Lila down gently and brushed her curls from her face. Time for reading, she said. Go pick your book. Lila ran off, and Riley turned back to Vivian, her expression quieter now. She asked about you, she said. She wants to know why you don't play with her. Vivian crossed her arms. Because I'm not the maid. That's not what she thinks you are. And what do you think I am? Riley hesitated. I think you're afraid. Vivian's jaw clenched. Watch yourself. But Riley didn't back down. She needs you. Not just your money. Not just your rules. You can't outsource love, Vivian. That's not what this is. Then what is it? Vivian couldn't answer. She just turned and walked away. That night, She couldn't sleep. The silence in the house no longer felt calm. It felt empty. She got up around midnight, wandered barefoot through the halls, and stopped outside Lila's door. She opened it slowly. Riley was sitting in the rocking chair by the bed, a blanket wrapped around her shoulders, book in her lap. Lila was asleep, curled against a stuffed elephant. Riley looked up. Her voice was barely a whisper. She had a nightmare. Asked me to stay. Vivian nodded. Thank you. She was about to turn away when Riley said, You could have come in. I didn't want to wake her. That's not why you stayed at the door. Vivian stood in the dim light, her expression unreadable. You're not here to psychoanalyze me.
No.
I'm here to care for her. But I see things. I see you. Vivian swallowed. Go to bed when you can. I will. But neither of them moved. The silence stretched long between them, thick with things unsaid. Then Riley added, You don't have to do this alone, you know. I've done it alone for years. And how's that working out for you? Vivian almost laughed. Almost. You're brave when you're tired. I'm honest when you let me be. Vivian lingered a moment longer. Then she turned, her voice softer than it had been in years. Good night, Riley. Good night, Vivian. When she finally made it back to bed, Vivian stared at the ceiling for hours. Her heart beat too loudly in the silence. Not because of fear, but because something had shifted. Something dangerous. Something real. And she didn't know how to stop it. The next day, Riley was back to her quiet, focused self. She cleaned, played with Lila, made lunch, folded clothes. But every time Vivian entered a room, their eyes met, and something passed between them. Not flirtation. Not tension. Something slower. Heavier. Like two people standing at the edge of something they hadn't chosen, but couldn't walk away from either. That afternoon, as Vivian walked past the laundry room again, she paused. Riley stood with her back to her, folding a soft white towel. Vivian watched her for a beat. Then, why did you really take this job? Riley turned. I told you. You said it was honest work. It is. But you didn't say what you were running from. Riley looked down. Maybe I was running toward something. Like what? Safety. Purpose. A home. You think you found it here? Riley hesitated. Some days. And the others? I remind myself I'm not supposed to fall in love with things that don't belong to me. Vivian's pulse stopped. You shouldn't say things like that. Then tell me to stop. But Vivian didn't. Couldn't. Because for the first time since her husband died, for the first time since she decided to close herself off to everything and everyone, Vivian wanted to belong to something too. Vivian told herself the shift was temporary. A side effect of too many quiet nights and too much proximity. She told herself it would fade. That this pull, this unsettling, magnetic ache in her chest, would vanish if she simply ignored it long enough. But it didn't. And it wasn't just Riley's voice, or her laugh, or the way she gently tucked Lila's hair behind her ear without even thinking. It was the quiet things. The way Riley never walked loudly in the house. How she refilled the coffee container without being asked. The way her gaze softened when she looked at Lila, and the way it sharpened when she looked at Vivian. Like she could see right through her. One evening, Vivian returned from a rare trip to the grocery store to find music playing softly from the living room. Not loud. Just enough to fill the space. She paused in the foyer listening. It wasn't a song she recognized. Something acoustic. Soft vocals. She set the bags down quietly and walked toward the sound. Riley stood barefoot in the living room, spinning slowly with Lila in her arms, the child's head resting against her shoulder, eyes half closed. They didn't see her. Riley was singing softly along with the music, swaying gently, her cheek pressed to Lila's hair. It wasn't a song that made Vivian's chest ache. It was the way Riley looked like she belonged there. Like she wasn't playing a role, wasn't pretending, just living, breathing, loving. Vivian stepped back before they noticed her and went straight to the kitchen, her hands trembling slightly as she put away the groceries. She didn't know how to name what she was feeling, but it wasn't professional, and it wasn't safe. That night, After Lila had gone to bed and Riley was quietly tidying up, Vivian stood by the kitchen island, wine glass untouched in her hand. "You don't have to clean everything," she said, not quite looking at her. Riley glanced up. "I don't mind." "You always say that." "Because it's true. You're not a servant. I'm not treated like one." Vivian turned to face her fully. "Aren't you?" Riley's hands froze over the dish towel. "What are you trying to say?" "I don't know," Vivian admitted. "Sometimes I forget you're not." She stopped. Riley's voice was steady. "Not what?" "Yours." Silence. Vivian hated how fast her pulse raced at that word. "You need to be careful," she said, her tone cooler now. "We both do."
Why?
"Because this isn't what I hired you for." Riley took a slow breath. "I know what you hired me for, Vivian. I'm doing it. I'm taking care of your daughter. I'm cleaning your house. I'm keeping your secrets. I'm showing up every damn day." "That's not the point." "Then what is the point?" Vivian slammed the glass down harder than intended. "You're getting too close. To you. To everything." Riley stepped around the counter, carefully, like approaching a frightened animal. "Vivian, I don't want anything from you. I don't want your money. I don't care about your past. But I care about Lila." And her voice faltered, just a breath. "And I care about you, too. Whether I'm supposed to or not." Vivian stared at her. "You don't know me. Then let me." "It's not that simple." "Why not?" "Because I built walls for a reason. And I never asked you to tear them down. But I think maybe you're tired of standing behind them alone." Vivian turned away, but Riley's presence followed her like a shadow. "You can't say things like that," she whispered.
Why?
"Because I don't know what I'll do if you mean them." Riley didn't touch her. She didn't move. She just stood there, letting the silence stretch between them like a lifeline. Then she said, "Good night, Vivian," and left the room. That night, Vivian didn't sleep. Again. But not because of fear. Because her chest felt too full of something she couldn't name.
Want. Ache.
Longing.
Hope.
None of it was safe. All of it was real. The next morning, Vivian woke to the sound of laughter and something burning. She rushed downstairs barefoot, heart pounding, only to find Riley in the kitchen, waving a towel in front of the smoke detector, laughing as Lila pointed to the toaster. "She wanted to make you breakfast," Riley explained, eyes bright. I looked away for 2 seconds and, well, Vivian didn't say anything at first. Just stood there, breath caught in her throat. Then slowly she smiled. "That's very brave of you." "We made backup pancakes," Lila added proudly. "They're only a little burned." Vivian crouched and kissed the top of her daughter's head. "They're perfect." Riley handed her a plate, and their fingers brushed. Neither of them pulled away immediately. That evening, something shifted again. Vivian had a headache from a long day of phone calls and financial planning, secret work she still did behind closed doors to maintain the illusion of being a woman rebuilding, not one in hiding. She stepped into the living room to check on Lila and found her asleep on the couch, her hand curled loosely in Riley's. Riley was half asleep too, head resting on the back cushion, breath slow. The sight pierced Vivian's chest. She stood there for a long time watching them. Then she crossed the room, picked up a blanket, and gently draped it over both of them. Riley stirred. Eyes fluttered open. Met hers. "Hey," she whispered. "Sorry, we crashed. Don't be." Vivian hesitated. "She sleeps best when you're near." Riley blinked. "And you?" Vivian's voice was barely a whisper. "I don't remember the last time I slept well at all." Riley shifted slightly, making room beside her. "Then sit with us." Vivian didn't move. Not right away.
But she wanted to. So badly.
She stepped closer. Saturday. The couch was small. Their knees touched. Vivian could feel the warmth of Riley's skin through the thin fabric of her pants. They didn't speak again. Just sat in silence. Together. And in that silence, something undeniable bloomed. Vivian wasn't used to hesitation. She built her empire on quick decisions, sharp instincts, and ruthless clarity. But with Riley, she hesitated. All the time. It was in the pause before she entered a room Riley was in the way she lingered at the doorway instead of sitting beside her, in the way her hand almost, reached out when Riley brushed past her. Almost. Never quite. And it was killing her. It had been 4 days since the night on the couch, since their knees touched and they sat in silence with Lila's small body sleeping between them, warmth thick between them like fog. Since then, something between them had changed, subtly but unmistakably. Riley didn't look away as quickly anymore. Her fingers brushed longer. Her voice softened, as if always on the edge of saying something she wasn't sure she should. And Vivian was unraveling. Quietly, slowly, irrevocably. One afternoon, while Lila was at a friend's birthday party and the house was uncharacteristically quiet, Vivian walked into the laundry room where Riley was folding towels. Again. Always folding towels. "Do you ever get tired of this?" Vivian asked. Riley glanced up. "Laundry. Of being here. Why would I?" "Because it's not glamorous. It's not big. You deserve more than this." Riley smiled softly. "I didn't come here for glamour." "Then why did you come?" Riley looked at her for a long moment, then set down the towel. "Because I wanted a place to be still. I didn't know it then, but I do now. I needed to land somewhere I didn't have to prove anything." Vivian leaned against the doorframe. "Do you feel like you still have to prove something to me?" "Sometimes." "Why?" "Because you're watching me like you're waiting for a reason to ask me to leave." Vivian's throat tightened. "I'm not." "Aren't you?" "No." Riley stepped closer. Slowly. "Then what are you waiting for?" Vivian didn't answer. Couldn't. Because the truth was sitting like fire in her chest. She was waiting for permission. Not from Riley. From herself. She was terrified of the way her heart beat louder when Riley entered the room. Terrified of what it meant to want someone again, deeply, truly, after so many years of convincing herself she didn't need anyone. "This is dangerous," she whispered. Riley didn't step back. "Only if you're lying to yourself." Vivian's voice dropped. "I don't know how to stop lying to myself." "Then let me remind you what truth feels like." The silence between them felt electric. But then Lila's laugh echoed from the driveway, cutting through the moment like a blade. Riley stepped back instantly, eyes dropping. "She's home." Vivian watched her leave. Watched her compose herself, smile as Lila came running in with frosting on her face and a balloon in her hand. Watched her return to the role she was hired to play. But something inside Vivian cracked that day. That night, after Lila was asleep, Vivian sat on the front porch for the first time in months. The air was cool, the sky clear, and when she heard the soft creak of the front door opening behind her, she didn't flinch. "Couldn't sleep?" Riley's voice asked gently. "I'm starting to think I forgot how." Riley stepped out onto the porch, wrapped in a light sweater, barefoot. "It's quieter out here than I expected. I don't come out much." "Why not?" "Because I've spent years keeping everything in. I didn't know what would come out if I started letting things breathe." Riley sat on the step below her, hugging her knees. "What do you want to let out?" Vivian looked down at her. The moonlight hit Riley's face in a way that made her eyes seem impossibly deep. "Everything." "Then start small." "Like what?" "Like one truth you've never said out loud." Vivian hesitated. "Then I'm scared." "Of what?" "Of wanting something I can't have." Riley turned to face her fully. "What if it's not about having? What if it's about feeling it fully, even if it doesn't last?" "You think this won't last?" "I think you're not letting it begin." Vivian leaned forward slightly. "Riley, yes? If I kiss you right now, I don't know if I'll ever be able to stop." "Then maybe you should kiss me only if you're ready for what comes after." Vivian stared at her. The space between them felt impossibly fragile. Then she stood up, walked inside,
Closed the door gently.
Riley didn't follow, and Vivian didn't sleep. Again. The next morning was tense in all the ways silence could be. But neither of them avoided each other. And that was worse, somehow. They danced around words they couldn't say, looks they couldn't hold too long, touches they couldn't excuse. At lunch, Lila spilled a cup of juice. It splattered across the counter, dripping onto the floor, catching both women by surprise. Sorry, Lila gasped, teary-eyed. Riley bent down. It's okay, sweetie. It's just juice. But Vivian was already grabbing towels, hands moving fast, breath sharp. It's fine, she said tightly. It's just a mess. It's always a mess. Riley stood slowly. It's not about the juice, is it? Vivian froze. Lila watched them with wide eyes. Vivian looked at Riley, voice low. Not now. But Riley didn't back down. You can't keep doing this. Running from what you feel and pretending it's about spilled juice or dirty laundry or bedtime routines. Vivian's hand tightened on the towel. We're not having this conversation in front of Lila. Then let's have it tonight. Why? Because if we don't, I'm going to have to leave. Vivian's breath stopped. You'd leave? If staying means pretending nothing's happening between us, yes. Riley, don't answer now. But tonight, after she's asleep, I'll be in the garden. If you don't come out, I'll know. Know what? Riley's voice was barely above a whisper. That I should stop loving you. And with that, she walked away. That evening, after Lila was tucked into bed, after the lights were low and the house was silent again, Vivian sat on the edge of her bed for almost an hour. Frozen, terrified, hopeful. At 10:17 p.m., she opened the back door, walked into the garden barefoot, and saw Riley sitting on the bench beneath the magnolia tree. She looked up. Vivian's breath caught. You came, Riley whispered. Vivian walked forward, stopped in front of her. I'm tired of pretending, she said. Riley stood slowly. Then stop. Vivian reached up, touched her face. I'm not ready for everything, but I'm ready for this. And then she kissed her. No hesitation, no apology. Just years of loneliness, longing, and emotion crashing into one perfect, fragile, unstoppable moment. Riley kissed her back like she'd been waiting her whole life. And maybe she had. The moment their lips touched, Vivian felt the world crack open around her. It wasn't fireworks or some cinematic explosion. It was deeper than that. Quieter. It was the stillness of something falling into place after too long left out of alignment. Riley's lips were soft, warm, and trembling just slightly, like she was feeling the same storm inside her that Vivian was trying so hard to contain. But when Vivian deepened the kiss, when her hand slid up into Riley's hair and Riley let out a quiet gasp against her mouth, she knew there was no containing it anymore. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't confusion. This was real. Vivian pulled back first.
Barely.
Their foreheads touched, breath mingling in the cool night air. I don't know what I'm doing, she admitted, her voice raw. Riley smiled. Neither do I. That's the best part. Vivian let out a breath that felt like release. This changes everything. It doesn't have to. It already has. Riley pulled back enough to look her in the eyes. Do you regret it? No. Vivian's answer was immediate, honest, and sharper than she meant it to be. But it scares me. And I don't want to hurt you. Then don't, Riley whispered. Just don't run. Vivian took her hand. Their fingers laced like they were meant to. And in that moment, something in her finally let go. They stood there for a while, not speaking, not moving, just existing in the quiet hum of something new. But eventually, the world returned. The night grew colder. Lila would wake in the morning. And they were still living under the same roof, still navigating something fragile, still hiding too many truths. So they said goodnight. A kiss on the cheek, a long look, and a silence that held more than any words could. The next morning, the energy in the house shifted. Not awkward, not uncomfortable, just charged. When their eyes met over breakfast, it lingered. When their hands brushed while clearing the plates, it stayed. And when Vivian caught Riley humming again in the laundry room, she leaned against the doorframe and smiled. You sing when you're happy. Riley looked over her shoulder, eyes soft. I'm trying not to. Why? Because when I let myself feel happy, something always ruins it. Not this time, Vivian said, quieter. I won't let that happen. But deep down, She wasn't sure if she could keep that promise. Because she was still lying. Still pretending. Still hiding the truth about who she really was and why Riley was even in her life to begin with. That night, after Lila was asleep, Vivian knocked on Riley's bedroom door. For a moment, she almost turned away. But then the door opened. Riley stood there in a loose t-shirt and leggings, no makeup, her hair falling in soft waves over her shoulders.
"Hi," she said.
Vivian stepped in. "Can we talk?" Riley stepped aside. Vivian entered. The room was simple.
Neat.
One window open, letting in the night air. The bed unmade but clean. A photo of a little boy on the nightstand, probably one of her siblings. Vivian sat on the edge of the bed. Riley stayed standing. "Is this about last night?" she asked softly. "Partly. If you regret it, just say it." "I don't," Vivian said quickly. I need you to understand something." "Okay. This house. My situation. It's not what it seems." Riley frowned. "What do you mean?" "I'm not broke." The words felt like knives leaving her tongue. "I'm not rebuilding my life. I never lost it. I chose to hide it." Riley didn't move. "Why?" "Because every woman who came into Lila's life before came for the wrong reasons. For money. For power. For me, sometimes, but never for her." "So you pretended?"
"Yes."
"I wanted to see who would love her without knowing what she came with. Who would love me without knowing what I could offer." Riley sat down slowly. "And you think I wouldn't have?" "I didn't know. I didn't even think it would matter. But then you became part of this house. Part of her.
Part of me."
Riley looked away. "How long were you going to keep lying?" "I wasn't lying. Not at first. I just omitted things. But then it got harder to tell you without making it feel like a betrayal." "It is a betrayal." Vivian flinched. "I know. That's why I'm telling you now." "Because we kissed?" "Because I care about you. And I want to do this right." Riley stood. "So, everything you said about not hurting me, was that real?" "Yes." "Then, why do I feel like I've been played?" Vivian stood too. "Riley, please. You're not just my boss. You're a stranger with a secret life. You watched me open up to you while you sat on a throne and pretended to be broken." "I am broken," Vivian said, voice cracking. "I may have money, but I've been alone for years. I lost my husband. I've been raising a child in silence. I haven't let anyone close enough to see the real me until you." Riley didn't reply at first. Her jaw was tight. Her eyes were too bright. "Then, I don't care that you're rich, Vivian. I care that you didn't trust me with the truth." "I was scared. So am I." A beat. Then Riley whispered, "You should go." "Riley, please." Vivian stood there for a moment, then nodded. She walked to the door. But before she opened it, she turned. "I meant it. All of it. The kiss. The feelings. Everything." Riley didn't look at her. Vivian left. The next 2 days were cold. Not rude. Just distant. Riley did her job. She was kind to Lila. But the warmth was gone. The lingering looks were over. The tension replaced with silence. Vivian ached with every step Riley took that didn't pause near her. Every word she said that didn't include her name. Every door she closed softly, as if trying not to wake a sleeping pain. But then, on the third night, Vivian found something on her pillow. A folded note. Just 5 words. "Meet me in the garden. 11 p.m." Vivian waited until the minute struck before stepping into the night air, heart pounding. Riley was already there, sitting on the same bench under the magnolia tree, where it all began. She stood when she saw Vivian. "I've been thinking," she said quietly. "So have I." "You scared me," Riley admitted. "Not because you're rich. Because you pretended to be someone else. I didn't mean to deceive you. But you did." Vivian stepped closer. "I'll spend the rest of my life proving that I won't lie to you again." "I don't need you to prove anything, Vivian." "Then what do you need?" Riley looked at her, eyes soft. "I need to believe this us isn't just another part of your hidden world." Vivian took her hand. "It's the only part that's real." Riley stared at her for a moment. Then she kissed her again. No fear. No hesitation. Just truth. They didn't speak as they walked back into the house that night. No words were needed. Not after that kiss. It was slower than the first, deeper than the last. There was no urgency in it, only certainty. When Vivian closed the back door behind them and turned to face Riley in the moonlit hallway, she saw it in her eyes.
Not just desire.
Not just affection.
Trust.
Earned. Fragile.
Real.
Vivian reached out, took Riley's hand in hers, and for a moment, neither of them moved. Then Riley said, barely above a whisper, "Come with me." She led her up the stairs, slowly, carefully, deliberately, as if afraid the wrong step might break the spell. The hallway was dark, but they knew the way. When Riley opened the door to her bedroom and stepped aside, Vivian followed without hesitation. She didn't plan to stay the night. She wasn't sure if she could. But when Riley reached for her again, pulling her close, their foreheads touching in the quiet space between breaths, all the walls Vivian had spent years building finally gave out. Their kiss was softer this time, but no less intense. Hands moved slowly. Clothing was removed with reverence, not haste. Each touch was discovery. Each sigh was permission. Vivian had forgotten what it felt like to be held without being expected to perform. Riley didn't want power. She didn't want protection. She just wanted her. They moved together like a secret being spoken in a language only they could understand. And when Vivian finally let go, of fear, of doubt, of grief, it wasn't with a scream or a sob. It was in the way her hand curled around Riley's hip, in the way she buried her face in Riley's neck and whispered her name like a prayer. After, they lay tangled in each other, skin still warm, breaths still sinking slowly. Riley traced lazy lines along Vivian's arm, her voice soft. "You're quiet. I'm thinking about how long I've wanted this and how terrified I am of losing it." Riley kissed her shoulder. "You won't. You say that like you know." "Because I do. I've never felt safer than I do with you." Vivian looked at her. "I've never let anyone in like this." "Then maybe that's the beginning of something worth keeping." Vivian stayed the night. Not because she planned to, not because it was expected, but because when she tried to leave, sitting up slowly in the dark, feet searching for the floor, Riley whispered, "Don't," and her heart answered before her body did. She woke up the next morning wrapped in warmth she hadn't known she was allowed to have. Riley was already up, but a cup of coffee waited on the nightstand, still warm. A note sat beside it. Lila woke early. She asked where you were. "I told her you were dreaming of pancakes." Vivian smiled despite herself. She slipped on her robe and headed downstairs, pulse racing, not with fear, but with something gentler, something closer to hope. In the kitchen, Riley was flipping pancakes while Lila sat on the counter, swinging her legs. They both looked up when Vivian entered. "Mommy." Lila grinned. "Riley said you had magic pancake dreams." "Did she?" Vivian shot Riley a look, half teasing. Riley shrugged, smirking. It seemed better than the truth. Vivian arched an eyebrow. "And what's the truth?" "That you're in love with your maid." The words weren't spoken aloud, but they were there, in the air between them. In the glance they shared. In the smile Vivian couldn't stop. Lila hopped down and ran to hug her, and Vivian crouched to hold her tight. "You smell like pancakes," Lila said. "That's because someone's a very good cook." "She's the best," Lila whispered proudly. "She's special." Vivian looked up. Riley was watching them with a softness in her eyes that made Vivian's throat ache. That evening, after Lila went to bed, they didn't talk about what had happened the night before. They didn't need to. Riley curled into her on the couch, and Vivian held her like something precious. They watched an old movie neither of them cared about. Their fingers stayed linked the entire time. But the silence didn't last forever. Eventually Vivian said, "We can't keep this secret from her forever." Riley shifted slightly. "She's 6. She's smart. She is." Vivian hesitated. "Do you think she'd understand?" "If you're asking if she'll be confused about love, I don't think so." "I'm not afraid of her questions." I'm afraid of what happens if we give her stability and then take it away. Riley turned to face her. I'm not going anywhere. Don't promise that. Why not? Because promises break. People break. I'm not like the people who hurt you, Vivian.
No.
You're not. Vivian leaned in and kissed her, slowly, like sealing something fragile. But even as her lips pressed to Riley's, her mind whispered doubts. Not about Riley. About herself. She didn't know how to be loved without ruining it. But Riley held her tighter. And for now, that was enough. Over the next week, they learned how to live with the shift. Nothing about their daily routines changed on the surface. But underneath, everything was different. They moved like women with a secret. Not one of shame, but one of value. They stole glances over breakfast. Riley's fingers brushed Vivian's wrist a second longer when handing her coffee. Vivian started making excuses to come into whatever room Riley was in, just to see her smile. They hadn't talked about what they were yet. It didn't feel necessary. It was enough just to exist in this space, finally. But the world doesn't stay quiet for long. One night, as they sat in the living room reading, Vivian's phone buzzed. She frowned. Unknown number. Riley looked up. Everything okay? Vivian hesitated, then answered. Vivian Blake speaking. Silence. Then a low voice said, Nice act you've got going there. I wonder how long it'll last when people start asking questions. Vivian stood, her chest tightening. Who is this?
Click.
The line went dead. Riley rose from the couch. Vivian? It's nothing, she lied, setting the phone down too carefully. Just a wrong number. But her voice had changed. And Riley knew. She always knew. Vivian didn't sleep that night. The caller's voice, low, mocking, familiar in a way that sent chills down her spine, played in her head on a loop. She tried to convince herself it was a prank, a wrong number, a coincidence. But she didn't believe in coincidences. Not anymore. She stayed in the dark, watching Riley sleep beside her, her features soft and calm in the moonlight. Riley trusted her now. Completely. Lila adored her. And Vivian had let herself believe, for one fleeting moment, that it might all last. But nothing ever did. The next morning, she was quieter than usual. Riley noticed instantly. She didn't press, not at first. She simply moved closer, touched Vivian's hand in the kitchen as she passed her the coffee, lingered behind her as she packed Lila's lunch. When Vivian turned too quickly and nearly bumped into her, Riley reached up instinctively to steady her. You okay? She asked gently. Vivian nodded, not meeting her eyes. Just tired. You haven't been yourself since last night. It's nothing. Riley tilted her head. You're lying. Vivian exhaled, shoulders tight. I don't want to talk about it. Okay, Riley said softly, but the worry in her eyes didn't fade. That afternoon, Vivian sat at her office, the door closed, the blinds drawn. She scrolled through her private contacts list, trying to decide who she could trust. There weren't many left. Not after the last scandal. Not after the leaks. Not after she'd cut herself off from nearly everyone in her former world. She had stepped down from public leadership, but she still owned everything. She still held the strings. But someone clearly knew. Someone had been watching. And they were waiting to pull something loose. She called her security advisor, a man she hadn't spoken to in over a year. I need to know if someone's been digging into me, she said, voice clipped. Anyone local. Discreet. You sure? Yes. You're still off-grid as far as most are concerned. But I'll check. Give me a few days. I don't have a few days. Then I'll make it faster. She hung up and stared at the phone like it might give her answers. It didn't. That night, Riley found her outside in the backyard again, pacing slowly in the shadows near the garden. Vivian, she said, quiet. You're scaring me. I'm fine. You're not. Vivian stopped. The look in Riley's eyes cracked something in her. I got a call. An anonymous number. Someone knows. They know I'm not who I said I was. What did they say? They didn't have to say much. Just enough to remind me that everything I've built here could disappear in a second. Riley stepped closer. Is this about your business? Or about me? Both. Then tell me everything. Vivian hesitated. Then, slowly, she opened her mouth and let the truth out. About the company. About the lawsuits she buried. About the ex-employees who hated her for refusing to sell. About the people who'd made threats before. About the partner who tried to take everything from her. You think this is one of them? Riley asked after a long silence. I don't know. Maybe. Or someone new. Someone watching this house. Watching you. Riley's expression didn't flinch. Then let them watch. Vivian stared at her. You're not scared? Of what? That someone will see me loving you? Let them. If your world is too dangerous for that, then let's face it together. I can't let anything happen to you. Or to Lila. Then stop hiding. I don't know how. Riley reached up, touched her face gently. Then let me help you. Vivian leaned into her palm, her voice a whisper. I've never had anyone say that to me before. Then you've been around the wrong people. They stood there for a moment, the quiet between them full of more truth than any argument could hold. But just as Riley leaned in to kiss her, a rustling sound broke the silence. Behind the fence.
Quick.
Sharp. Vivian pulled back instantly. Riley turned. Was that? Vivian was already moving. She crossed the yard in 3 strides, pushed the side gate open, and found nothing. No one. Just a piece of the fence paneling slightly ajar. Vivian, Riley said behind her. I think you're right. Someone's watching. The next day, Vivian installed a camera system around the house. Discreet. Hidden. But thorough. She didn't tell Riley everything, but she showed her the monitors. You see something, you tell me. Immediately. You don't think you're overreacting? No, Vivian said. Because the last time I ignored my instincts, I almost lost everything. I'm not your last mistake, Riley said, voice gentle. I know. That night, they stayed up late together, but neither of them felt relaxed. Even in each other's arms, there was a current of unease humming beneath the surface. Vivian felt it in the way she reached for her gun before bed. Riley felt it in the way Lila clung to her tighter after her bedtime story, like she knew something had shifted. And then, just before midnight, the camera in the front yard picked up motion. Vivian bolted upright. Riley followed. They crept downstairs together. Watched the monitor. A figure stood at the edge of the driveway. Not moving. Just watching. Then, after several minutes, they turned and disappeared into the trees. Could you tell who it was? Riley whispered. No, you should call the police. And say what? That I'm a rich woman playing poor, and someone's watching me? Vivian, no.
Not yet.
If they wanted to hurt us, they would've. This is a warning. So, what do we do? Vivian turned to her, voice steady now. We live our lives. We don't run. We don't show fear. And we protect Lila no matter what. And us? Riley asked quietly. Do we protect us? Vivian looked at her, then nodded. With everything I have. The next morning, the air felt different. Not just outside, the whole house. Heavier. Still. Like the silence had weight. Vivian watched Lila eat her cereal, her little feet swinging beneath the kitchen stool, unaware of the undercurrent of tension surrounding her. Riley sat across the table, eyes flicking to Vivian every so often, silently asking questions they didn't want to answer in front of Lila. You want to go to the park today? Riley asked, brightening her voice for Lila's sake. Yes. Lila grinned, cheeks puffed with cereal. Can we take snacks? Of course. Riley glanced at Vivian. You want to come? Vivian hesitated. She didn't want to let them out of her sight. Not now. But she also didn't want to bring tension to Lila's day. I'll meet you there, she said softly. After I handle a few things. Riley nodded slowly. That afternoon, Vivian met with her lawyer in a nondescript cafe 30 minutes outside the neighborhood. They sat in a back corner, hushed voices, eyes scanning every new face that walked in. I need you to check on the non-disclosure agreements, Vivian said. Every former employee, every investor, everyone who's ever been inside my company. That's a tall order. And it needs to be done discreetly. You think it's corporate? I don't know what it is. But someone knows where I am. And I can't afford to have this exposed.
Not now.
Is this about the woman? Vivian's eyes narrowed. Excuse me? I mean your maid. I saw her in a few of the security pings you sent over. You two seem close. We are, Vivian said flatly. What does that have to do with this? Nothing. Unless she's a vulnerability. Vivian leaned in. She's not. The lawyer raised his hands. I'm just saying, be careful. Whoever this is, they're watching the house. Everyone in it. That sentence followed Vivian back to the park. She spotted Lila first, spinning on the swings, giggling. Then Riley, seated on a bench, eyes always tracking the little girl. Protective. Present. Vivian's heart clenched. She'd trusted the wrong people so many times. But Riley had never once looked at her like a woman with power. Only like a woman worth loving. Still, there were things she didn't know about Riley. Things Vivian had never asked. That night, after Lila was in bed and the house was dark, they sat in the living room with only the soft glow of the fireplace between them. Vivian turned to Riley slowly. Can I ask you something personal? Riley set her mug down. Of course. Your family. You never talk about them. Riley's smile faded, just slightly. There's not much to say. No siblings? Parents? A little brother.
He's 12 now.
Lives with a foster family. I haven't seen him in years. Vivian leaned in.
Why?
Riley hesitated. Because I couldn't keep him. I was 17 when I became his legal guardian. Our mom was an addict. In and out of jail. I tried to hold it together, but I was a kid. I dropped out of school. Worked 2 jobs. Eventually, they said I wasn't stable enough. Took him away. Vivian's heart ached. Riley, I've been trying to get him back ever since. But without a degree, without a steady income, it's impossible. Why didn't you tell me? Because I didn't want pity. And because I didn't want you to think I came into your life for a safety net. I never thought that. Riley looked down. I've made peace with most of it. But I promised myself one thing. When I found a home again, a real one, I wouldn't let it go. Vivian reached for her hand. You have one now. Riley looked at her. Do I?
Yes.
Here. With me. With us. Their lips met again, this time with a kind of softness that made Vivian feel like her chest might split open. Not from pain. From everything she'd buried finally being allowed to breathe. Later that night, as Vivian showered, she heard Riley's voice faintly from the bedroom. She turned off the water, heart skipping. Riley. Silence. She stepped out, wrapped in a towel, and peeked through the door. Riley sat on the edge of the bed, phone in hand, face pale. Vivian approached carefully. What is it? Riley looked up, startled. Someone called me. What did they say? They knew my name. My brother's name. They said if I didn't walk away from you, they'd make sure I never saw him again. Vivian's blood ran cold. They threatened your brother? Riley nodded. I didn't even know they knew about him. Neither did I. Vivian sat beside her. This isn't just about me anymore. They're targeting you now. Who are they? I don't know. Riley's voice cracked. Vivian, what if I ruined everything just by being close to you? Vivian grabbed her hands.
No.
Don't you dare think that. They are the problem, not you. And I will protect you. Both of you. You can't promise that. Yes, I can. Because I'm not going to sit back and let someone threaten the only people I love. Riley blinked. You love me? Vivian's throat tightened. Yes. Riley exhaled like the words knocked the air out of her. Then she pulled Vivian into her arms, holding her tighter than ever before. That night, neither of them slept. They lay side by side, hands intertwined, hearts racing. The next morning, Vivian made a decision. She called her lawyer again. Change of plan, she said. I want a full background check. Not just on the company. On Riley, too. You think she's involved?
No.
I think someone else is using her past. And I want to know who. She hung up. Then she looked over at Riley, playing with Lila in the garden. laughter drifting through the window. The most real thing in her life was the one thing someone was now trying to destroy. And she would burn the whole world down before she let that happen. Vivian had spent years surviving in a world where trust was a currency more valuable than gold and twice as dangerous. And yet, even with all her experience, even with all her caution, nothing had prepared her for the feeling of helplessness when it came to Riley. Loving her had been effortless. Protecting her, however, was proving harder with every passing hour. The morning after Riley received the threat, the house felt like a pressure cooker. Vivian watched every movement outside through the newly installed security feeds. Her phone never left her hand. Every car that slowed near the house made her pulse spike. Lila noticed. "Mommy, are you mad?" she asked softly while coloring at the kitchen table. "No, baby. I'm just tired." Did Riley do something bad? Vivian's chest tightened.
No, sweetheart.
Riley could never do anything bad. From across the room, Riley looked up, eyes soft and full of pain she was clearly trying to hide. That night, after Lila was asleep, Vivian handed Riley a glass of wine and sat down across from her on the bed. "I have to tell you something," she began. Riley immediately straightened. "What is it?" "I ordered a background check. On you." Riley didn't speak at first. Her expression didn't change. But Vivian could see it. Something behind her eyes faltered. "I had to," Vivian continued. "Not because I don't trust you, but because I needed to know what they're using against you, what they have access to." Riley took a slow sip of her wine. "And? What did it say?" Vivian hesitated. "There's nothing alarming. A few minor infractions, missed court appearances, related to custody hearings. Some medical records, sealed. And a juvenile incident that was expunged." "That wasn't me," Riley said. "That was my mother. I took the blame for something she did because they would have taken my brother if I didn't." Vivian reached across the bed and took her hand. "You don't have to explain. I believe you." "Do you?"
Yes.
"And more than that, I admire you." Riley's voice cracked. "No one's ever said that to me before." Then they weren't paying attention. Vivian kissed her knuckles, slow and reverent. "You're the bravest person I've ever known." Riley leaned into her. They sat like that for a long time, foreheads touching, the silence deep but not empty, until Vivian's phone buzzed again. She checked the screen. Unknown number. A single text this time. "She's not who you think she is." No context. No follow-up. Just that. Vivian showed it to Riley. "They're trying to divide us," she said. "It won't work." But in her heart, doubt was already spreading like poison. Not about Riley's character, but about how deep this threat ran, and what they were willing to do to manipulate the truth. The next morning, Vivian received a call from her lawyer. "We found something," he said. "You're not going to like it. Tell me." "There's a woman. Elena Carver. She worked in the legal department of your former company. Quiet. Kept to herself. She disappeared after the last round of layoffs. And she resurfaced 2 months ago. In this city. Under a different name. And guess where she works now?" Vivian's blood went cold. "Where?" "With Child Protective Services. Specifically, in the office handling foster placements." Vivian's breath stopped. "You're saying..." "I'm saying she has access to records. To Riley's brother. To everything." "Is she the one making the threats?" "We don't have proof yet, but we know she has motive. Revenge. More like leverage. She lost her job after a policy you personally pushed through. Cost her pension, among other things. So she's coming after me, through Riley." "Looks like it." Vivian hung up and stared at the wall for a long time. Everything made sense now. The timing, the threats, the choice of target. It wasn't random. It was calculated. That afternoon, while Riley was out with Lila at the bookstore, Vivian called in another favor. A big one. She had friends in places most people didn't even know existed. People who owed her. People with long memories. "I need you to find Elena Carver," she said. Discreetly. "I want eyes on her, movements tracked, and every connection mapped out." If she so much as breathes near my family, I want to know before she exhales. Understood. When Riley came home, Vivian pulled her aside. I know who's behind it, she said. Her name is Elena Carver. She worked for me. I fired her after she leaked internal documents. She's bitter, smart, and now works somewhere that gives her access to your records. Riley's face went pale. So it is about me. It's about us. She's using your past to get to me, but we're not going to let her. What do? We stay calm. We stay together. And we document everything. If she tries to move legally, we'll already be 10 steps ahead. Riley nodded, but Vivian could see the fear in her eyes. Later that night, they curled up in bed together, Lila asleep down the hall, the entire house blanketed in a heavy stillness. Do you ever regret bringing me here? Riley whispered. Vivian turned to her. Never. You're the first thing in years that's made me feel alive again. Even with the danger? Especially with it. Because loving you is the only thing that's made all of this worth surviving. I'm scared. I know. Me too. But I'm not leaving. I won't let you. Riley kissed her then, slow, deep, full of everything unspoken. Vivian felt herself dissolve into her. The fire between them hadn't dimmed. It had only changed.
It wasn't wild now.
It was purposeful.
Fierce.
Protective. And the next morning, when a manila envelope was left at their doorstep, unmarked, unaddressed, they opened it together. Inside were copies of court records. Riley's file. Her brother's name. Photos from years ago. Vivian flipped through them slowly, then stopped. At the very back, there was a photo of Riley holding a baby.
Her brother.
And standing behind her, barely visible, was Elena. Watching. Smiling. Riley's hands began to tremble. She's been following me longer than I thought. Vivian closed the folder, her voice steel. Then it's time we stop running. What are you going to do? What I should have done from the start. Vivian stood, her eyes blazing. I'm going to take back control. Vivian Blake had spent years being underestimated by men in boardrooms, by partners who smiled while sharpening knives behind her back, by media outlets who reduced her to her last relationship or her last scandal. But if there was one thing Vivian knew how to do better than anyone, it was reclaim control. And now, with Riley's hand in hers, with her daughter sleeping peacefully in the next room, she was done playing defense. By noon the next day, she'd mobilized more than half the network she'd spent her entire career building. Private investigators, legal analysts, digital trackers, former intelligence consultants who owed her favors too old to question. In less than 6 hours, she had a full file on Elena Carver. Addresses, employers, aliases, financial records. But it wasn't until she saw the offshore transactions that she paused. She's getting paid, Vivian muttered. Riley looked up from across the desk. By who? Vivian turned the screen. This routing chain leads to a ghost account in Luxembourg. It's been feeding her small payments every month for the last 6 years. Someone's been funding her disappearance and her reemergence. So she's not working alone.
No.
She never was. Riley's fingers curled tighter on the edge of the desk. Vivian, what if this isn't just revenge? It's leverage.
Control.
Maybe someone wants to hurt me financially. Maybe politically. But they thought I'd be weaker if they came through you. They were wrong. Vivian stood, stepped around the desk, and cupped Riley's face in her hands. I am more dangerous with you by my side than I ever was alone. That night, Vivian called a private meeting at an upscale hotel under a different name. She wore a low bun, no makeup, sunglasses. Riley waited in the car. The man she met was older, with sharp features and a voice that sounded like smoke. I hear you have a pest, he said with a smile. I want her isolated, Vivian replied. Legally. Professionally. Quietly. No harm. Just exposure. Still prefer the clean methods, I see. It's more permanent. And expensive. I can afford it. Done. She slid him a flash drive. Everything you need is on here. I want the first wave of fallout to hit within 48 hours. And what will you be doing in the meantime? Vivian's eyes darkened. making sure my family's safe. She returned to the car with a silence so heavy it made Riley tense. What did you do? She asked gently. I started the clock, Vivian said. Now she is 2 days before everything she's built comes crashing down. And after that? We rebuild, without fear. That night, they didn't sleep. Not from worry, but from the overwhelming sense of nearness. Riley kissed her with slow desperation, like she wanted to memorize her with her mouth. Vivian let herself be unguarded, completely. Their bodies moved like water and fire, meeting in waves, pulling apart only to collide again. In the quiet moments between, Riley whispered truths Vivian had never heard before. You saved me, she said. You gave me something to fight for. You made me feel again, Vivian replied. You made me want again. By morning, Vivian was already dressed, back in control. The news broke by noon. Elena Carver, foster system supervisor, accused of corruption, identity fraud, and tampering with public records. Riley gasped when she read the headline. You exposed her. I had to. But won't that put your name back in the spotlight? I'm prepared for that. Are you?
Yes.
Because this time, I'm not standing alone. She took Riley's hand, squeezed it. This time, the story will be ours, not theirs. Later that day, Vivian picked Lila up from school personally. On the way home, Lila looked up at her with innocent eyes. Mommy, is everything okay? Vivian looked at her in the rearview mirror. Why do you ask? Because Riley cried this morning, and you were mad on the phone. Vivian's heart sank. Sometimes grown-ups have to do hard things to protect the people they love. But I promise, sweetheart, you're safe. And Riley is too. Lila smiled softly. I like her. I want her to stay forever. Vivian blinked away the sudden tears. Me too. That evening, as they ate dinner as a family, Vivian, Riley, and Lila, it almost felt normal. Like the storm had passed. But storms don't vanish. They just shift. And the next morning, a new envelope was slipped under the door. This one had no photos. Just a note.
Typed.
Cold. You think you've won. But you forgot one thing. Riley's past isn't the only one that can burn you. Vivian's fingers trembled as she read it. Riley saw it. What does it say? Vivian hesitated, then handed it to her. Riley's face drained. They're not stopping. No, Vivian said. They're just changing the angle. What now? Now we wait for them to show their next card. But in her mind, Vivian was already preparing. Because the only thing more dangerous than a woman who had something to lose was a woman who had already lost it once, and refused to ever lose it again. Vivian had always been the kind of woman who faced storms head-on. In business, in motherhood, in solitude, she met crises with precision and silence, controlling every variable, every move, every breath. But this was different. The threat was no longer vague, no longer focused solely on Riley. Now it had shifted, zeroing in on her past. The part she buried so deeply, even Riley didn't know it existed. That evening, after Lila was in bed and the house was still, Vivian sat in her office, lights low, monitors glowing, the new note resting on her desk like a loaded weapon. She'd already scanned it for fingerprints. Nothing. No trace. Whoever was behind this knew how to erase themselves. But the message was clear. You think you've won, but you forgot one thing. Riley's past isn't the only one that can burn you. And it was true. There were things. Vivian hadn't always been this version of herself. Before the money, before the company, before Lila, there were decisions. There were sacrifices. And there were bodies left behind, not literally but emotionally. People she'd used. Partnerships she'd ended. One in particular. Her name was Dahlia Ward. A name she hadn't said aloud in years. They'd met in graduate school. Vivian had been sharp, hungry, ambitious. Dahlia had been brilliant and wild, artistic, unstable, magnetic. They were fire and gasoline. And for a while it worked, until Vivian chose ambition over intimacy. Until she chose power. She left Dahlia behind without explanation, taking a business idea they'd built together and scaling it into the empire she owned today. Dahlia had disappeared, at least publicly, but some part of Vivian had always feared she'd resurface. And now the timing felt too precise. Riley entered the office quietly, barefoot, wearing one of Vivian's oversized sweaters. "You didn't come to bed," she said softly. Vivian didn't look at her. "I had some thinking to do." "Another note?" Vivian nodded. Riley crossed the room, picked it up. Her brow furrowed. "They're coming for you now. I know who they mean." Riley sat beside her. "Tell me." Vivian hesitated. "Then, her name was Dahlia. We were close. A long time ago. Before everything. I took something from her. An idea. I turned it into my company. She didn't fight me. But she could have." "You think she's behind this?" "I don't know. But she had reason." Riley stayed quiet. Vivian looked at her. "Say something. You think I'm going to walk away because you weren't perfect before we met? I think you should know that loving me means inheriting my ghosts. Then introduce me to them." Vivian almost laughed. Almost. But her throat was too tight. "I was ruthless," she said. "I made choices. Not always the right ones." "Did you ever do anything illegal?" "No." "Did you hurt people on purpose?" "Not at first." "Then you're human, Vivian. And you're allowed to have a past." Vivian looked at her, eyes glinting in the dim light. "You amaze me. You terrify me." They both smiled faintly. But the smile faded when the computer pinged. A notification. Vivian turned to the screen. An email. No sender. No subject. Just one link. She didn't click it. Not yet. Riley leaned closer. "It's bait." "It always is." Vivian hovered her mouse. Then clicked. A video loaded. It was grainy, old. Clearly pulled from a surveillance archive. Vivian in a cafe. Younger. Harder. Dahlia across from her, gesturing wildly. Vivian cold.
Silent.
Then rising. Walking away. The sound was muted, but the body language was unmistakable. Betrayal. The video cut to black. Then text appeared. "What happens when the world finds out the empire you built wasn't yours to begin with?" Riley read it. Her breath hitched. "Is it true?" "Partially." "Tell me." Vivian closed the laptop. "We had an idea. Together. She wanted to take it slow. I wanted to scale. She said no. I said goodbye. I didn't steal it. I executed it. But I didn't give her credit. Not publicly." "Did she ask for it?"
Once.
"I ignored her." Riley's voice was soft. "And you regret it?" "Every day." Riley leaned her head on Vivian's shoulder. "Then maybe this is your chance to do something different." "You mean apologize?" "Maybe not to her. Maybe to yourself. Maybe to the woman you had to become to survive all that." Vivian blinked fast. "Why do you always know the right thing to say?" "Because I'm in love with you." The words still startled her. Even now. Vivian turned, kissed her temple. "I'm in love with you too." The next morning, Vivian did something she hadn't done in over a decade. She reached out to Dahlia. The number was still active. She left a message. "I don't know if it's you, but if it is, meet me. One time. Name the place." She hung up. Then she waited. The response came 3 hours later. A single text. "The greenhouse. Thursday. Sunset." Vivian showed Riley. "You're going?" "Yes." "Alone?" "I think I have to." "Then you're not going alone." "I'll wait outside." "You walk in alone if you have to. But you don't face her alone." Vivian smiled. "God, I love you." "Don't say that like it's fragile." "Why?" "Because it's not." That night, Vivian didn't sleep. Neither did Riley. They lay in the dark, fingers linked, breath synced, hearts beating against the silence. Both knowing the next day could change everything. Both hoping it wouldn't. The greenhouse hadn't changed. Not really. Vivian stood outside it now, watching the sunlight bend through the dusty glass, the same old vines curling around the steel frame like a memory refusing to fade. It had been abandoned for years, A private property she'd once dreamed of buying, long before money stopped meaning anything real. But it had been theirs. A place she and Dahlia had used to sneak away when the world was too loud, when their dreams were too big, when their love was still young and sharp and full of impossible promises. And now, standing here again, Vivian felt like she was 23 and full of war. Riley stood just behind her. Close. Solid. You don't have to do this alone, she whispered. I know, Vivian said. But I need to walk in without you. Not because I don't want you there, but because I want to show her who I've become, not who I'm still hiding behind. Riley nodded slowly. I'll wait right here. Vivian turned, kissed her softly. No matter what happens in there, she said, I'll come back to you. I know. She walked through the creaking door, heart pounding, the air thick with the scent of soil and history. The light filtered through broken panes above, scattering across old planters and rusted tools. And there she was.
Dahlia.
Sitting on the edge of the old table they'd once used to design their first prototype, legs crossed, her long curls pulled back into the same messy bun she always wore when she was furious. She hadn't aged much.
Not in the way that mattered.
Her eyes were still sharp, still daring Vivian to flinch first. You came, she said. Vivian nodded. You asked me to.
No.
I provoked you to. And it worked. Vivian stepped closer. Is this about revenge? Dahlia let out a dry laugh. Isn't everything? You sent the videos. Of course I did. You think I didn't keep them? After what you did. What did I do, exactly? Vivian asked, voice calm but low. You abandoned me. You took our idea. You built a kingdom and left me in the dirt with nothing but your silence. I didn't steal it. You didn't credit it. Because you said you didn't want to scale it. I didn't want to sell it to sharks. That doesn't mean I wanted you to erase me. Vivian exhaled. You're right. That caught Dahlia off guard. Excuse me? You're right. I did erase you. Not to hurt you, but because I didn't know how to carry you with me and still survive the climb. I was weak. I was selfish. And I've paid for it every day since. Dahlia's expression cracked, just slightly. Why now? Because someone I love is being hurt because of my cowardice. The maid? Vivian nodded. Her name is Riley. She's not a weakness. She's the reason I'm here. And what do you want from me, Vivian?
To stop.
To let it go. Or to tell me what you want so I can give it to you and end this. Dahlia slid off the table and approached her slowly. You think this is about money? Isn't it? No, Dahlia whispered. It's about history, about memory, about not being the ghost in someone else's legacy. Vivian stepped forward. Then let's rewrite it. Together. What? Let me acknowledge you. Publicly. Not as some footnote in my empire, but as a co-founder, a partner in the origin. I'll open a foundation in your name. I'll fund your work. Hell, I'll give you equity if that's what you want. Why now? Because I can't keep running from the past if I want a future with her. Because I owe you. Because I'm tired of pretending I built everything alone. Dahlia looked at her for a long time. Then finally said, Do you still have the blueprint we sketched out on the back of that takeout menu? Vivian smiled faintly. I framed it. Dahlia blinked. Of course you did. It was always brilliant. So was I. You still are. A pause. Then Dahlia whispered, I don't hate you anymore. I wanted to. I tried to. But the truth is, I just wanted to be remembered. Vivian reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a folded letter. I wrote this a year after we ended. I never sent it, but you can read it now if you want. Dahlia took it with shaking hands. I don't know what this fixes. Maybe nothing. Maybe just today. But maybe that's enough, Dahlia murmured. She turned toward the light and opened the letter. Vivian stepped back. Goodbye, Dahlia. Goodbye, Viv. She left the greenhouse without looking back. Outside, Riley stood exactly where she'd promised. The second she saw Vivian, her eyes scanned her face for damage. Are you okay? She asked. Vivian didn't answer. She just walked straight into Riley's arms and held her like a lifeline. "I'm okay now," she whispered into her neck. "Did she forgive you?" "I think she remembered me. And maybe that's all we ever really want." Riley pulled back enough to look into her eyes. "You did the right thing." "I wanted to run," Vivian admitted. "But I couldn't. Not when you were waiting here for me." "I'll always wait." That night, Vivian held Riley in bed with a kind of tenderness that made time slow down. "Do you regret coming into this house?" Vivian asked softly. "Not even for a second. Even with everything that's happened? Especially because of it. Because now I know exactly who you are. And I love her." Vivian closed her eyes. "I want to give you everything. The house. The security. A future. But more than that, I want to give you peace." "Then stop trying to be perfect," Riley said gently. "Just be honest. Just be here. I'm here." And for the first time, Vivian meant it.
Completely.
The next morning, Vivian called a press contact, one she trusted. She arranged for an article to be released the following week. One that would credit Dahlia publicly. One that would explain the truth. One that would put the past to rest. Riley read the draft before anyone else. "You're really doing it," she said. "You're giving her place in your story. Because she earned it." "So did you." Vivian reached for her. "Come here." And when they kissed, there was no more fear. No more running. Just two women who had nothing left to hide. The article was published on a Thursday morning. Not in a tabloid, not in a magazine, but in a business journal known for its integrity. The title was bold, simple, and unapologetic. The real story behind Vivian Blake's empire, and the woman she owes everything to. Riley read it at the kitchen counter, barefoot, hair still wet from the shower, coffee steaming beside her. Vivian stood across from her, silent, watching.
It was all out now.
The full truth. The company's roots. The years of silence. The decision to finally give Dahlia credit. And more than that, Vivian's new vision for the future. A foundation in Dahlia's name. Scholarships. Investments in women-led startups. Riley looked up, eyes glassy. "You didn't just tell the truth. You built something from it." Vivian crossed the room, took her face in her hands. "I learned that from you." "What happens now?" Riley whispered. Vivian smiled. "Now we live." But the world doesn't always make that easy. The article went viral in its own quiet way, not because of scandal, but because of vulnerability. Because the woman once called stone-hearted had finally let the world see her bleed, and she bled with purpose.
Calls came in.
Emails. Some hateful, some forgiving. Some from former rivals. Some from strangers thanking her for telling a story they'd never seen reflected in someone like her. One afternoon, a letter arrived. Handwritten. The return address was from a town in Oregon. Vivian opened it slowly. Inside, a single page. "I see you. I forgive you. I'm proud of what you did."
D.
Vivian folded it, held it against her chest, and let herself cry in silence. The storm had passed, and in its place was something she hadn't expected: calm. In the weeks that followed, life took on a new rhythm. Vivian and Riley moved through the house like they'd always belonged there. Lila flourished, her laughter returning like sunlight. She didn't fully understand the whirlwind of everything that had happened, but she felt the safety in it. The certainty. Vivian began working again, slowly, intentionally. Not as the public face of anything, but behind the scenes, consulting for companies that actually cared about people, especially women and mothers and survivors. And Riley found herself becoming more than just the woman who once cleaned the house. She took courses online, started working part-time with one of the nonprofits Vivian funded. She started dreaming again. One night, after putting Lila to bed, they stood in the kitchen, finishing off a bottle of wine. Vivian reached into the drawer, pulled something small and velvet and blue. Riley blinked. "Is that—" Vivian didn't go down on one knee.
She didn't need to.
She just opened the box and let the ring catch the light. "I don't need a ceremony or an audience," she said. "But I need you. Not as my maid. Not as my savior. As the woman I choose. Every day. For the rest of my life." Riley stared at her. then laughed, breathless, tearful, amazed. You're serious? Terrifyingly. Riley didn't wait. She took the ring, slipped it on, and pulled Vivian into the kind of kiss that said yes louder than any words could. They didn't tell many people. They didn't need to. Their life wasn't built on performance anymore. It was built on quiet, on choosing each other in every ordinary moment. But they did something small for them. A ceremony in the backyard. Just the two of them and Lila. Lila wore a flower crown and danced around the garden, holding a tiny bouquet Riley made herself. Vivian wore a linen suit. Riley wore a soft white dress. They didn't exchange vows. They just looked at each other and spoke from the heart. "You are my peace," Vivian said.
You are my home, Riley replied.
And that was enough. Afterward, they made dinner together, played music,
Laughed.
Lila fell asleep in Riley's arms that night, whispering, "Can you be my other mommy now?" Riley kissed her forehead. "If you'll have me, yes." Vivian watched from the doorway, her heart full in a way it had never been. Weeks turned into months. The cameras around the house stayed up, but no new threats came. Dahlia kept her promise, disappeared back into her quiet life, letting the past stay buried where it belonged. Elena Carver was fired permanently, discredited, and quietly faded into obscurity. Vivian never mentioned her again. And slowly, the fear faded. Vivian learned how to garden. Riley painted again. Lila started calling Riley Mama Rai without being told to. And one night, long after the world had stopped watching, Vivian stood on the porch holding Riley's hand and whispered, "I used to think being loved meant being exposed. But now I know it means being seen and still chosen." Riley leaned in, forehead against hers. "And I choose you." Over and over and over again. Even on the hard days? Especially on the hard days. The stars above them blinked silently. The wind moved through the trees like a lullaby. And inside the house, the life they'd built waited, full of warmth, laughter, safety, and love. It hadn't been easy. Nothing real ever was. But in the end, the Maid didn't just win the CEO's heart. She rebuilt it. If you enjoyed this content and want to support the channel in a special way, try clicking the thanks button below. It's the one with the heart and $sign icon. With super thanks, you can make a direct contribution to the channel, which helps me keep creating awesome videos for you.